Hello, Yates County and beyond. Welcome back to another episode of Invasive Species Friday. Through this short weekly podcast, we at the Yates CCE hope to bring you information about the invasive species you may see around this county. We're floating in the water with this week's invasive, European frogbit. Native to Europe and northeastern Asia, European or common frogbit was first introduced in Canada in the 1930s as an ornamental plant. It escaped and made its way into northern New York by the 1970s. In the early 80s, it was discovered south of the St. Lawrence River and was found in Lake Ontario in the 1990s. It has now been reported in at least 9 northeast states from Wisconsin to New Hampshire, as well as Washington State. In 2022, common frogbit was confirmed in the south end of Canandaigua Lake. The plant tends to grow best in quiet open waters, especially in areas rich in calcium. The leaves of this aquatic plant are round to heart-shaped and 1/2 inch to 2.5 inches across, and can look like mini water lilies. The tops of the leaves are green, but the bottoms can be dark purple, red, or green, and have a spongy texture along the midvein. This coating helps the plant float. European frogbit can either float freely or put down roots in shallow water. These can reach over 1.5 feet long and don't necessarily anchor to the substrate. Though the plant does produce 3-petaled flowers in the early summer, it rarely makes seeds. Instead, it reproduces through stem-like runners called stolons that branch out from the center of the plant and create new plants. Stolons also produce winter buds called turions. These break away from the plant and lie dormant in the bottom of the water body for the winter. In the spring, the buds float to the surface and start growing. Each frogbit plant produces between 100 and 150 turions a year. European frogbit tends to tangle into each other as they grow, forming large mats of vegetation. The mats hamper fishing, boating, swimming, and other recreational activities. The dense vegetation can also block water flow, slowing streams, canals, and ditches. The masses drastically reduce the light reaching other plants in the water column. Over time, as native biodiversity declines, the dissolved oxygen in the water also drops, creating an inhospitable environment for both plants and animals. In some studies, the vegetation below a European frogbit infestation reduced by as much as 95%, and there was also a decrease in snails, crustaceans, and insect larvae. Because European frogbit can spread relatively quickly and the turions can hibernate in mucky sediment for a while, this is one invasive that needs quick and persistent attention. Of course, the best management strategy is prevention. The free-floating nature of this plant means it can spread easily through wave action, so make sure you slow your boat when passing an infestation. If you're in a water body where there's frogbit present, be very careful not to take any of it along. Clean, drain, and dry your boat and equipment before leaving the water body area. The plants can be transported in stored water, get tangled in propellers and gear, and turions can hide in mud. It's also important to report it to IMAP Invasives, your local partnership for regional invasive species management, or your local extension office. If common frogbit is already present and you want to help get rid of it, there are a few strategies available. Hand pulling is labor intensive and most effective in the early spring to summer. It's better with smaller populations. For larger infestations, a mechanical harvester may be an option. A modified version of diver-assisted suction harvesting can be employed as well. Since the plants are on top of the water, the diver isn't necessarily needed, as the vacuum can be operated from the deck of the boat instead. Neither the hand pulling, the harvester, nor dash remove the turions from the sediment, however, so be prepared to repeat the process in the coming years. It's also important to dispose of the removed plant material properly to prevent further spread. There may be herbicides available to help control this frogbit, and the use of shade cloth can inhibit the plant's growth, but both can greatly affect the rest of the aquatic ecosystem, so should be used sparingly. The last thing we want to touch on is the lookalikes of European frogbit. Water lilies were mentioned at the beginning of this episode, but the leaves of these are rounder and much larger than those of common frogbit. They also have larger flowers with many more petals. Water shield or dollar bonnet has the green top and purple bottom leaves, but they're distinctly oval-shaped. Additionally, all underwater parts of that plant are covered in a thick slime to prevent it drying out during drought. Finally, there is a native species of this plant, the North American frogbit. This can be distinguished from the European variety by looking at the spongy coating on the bottom of the leaves. On the American frogbit, the coating is a thick raised disc shape, but on the common, it's only along the veins. If you happen to see the flowers of the frogbit, Both have 3 white petals with a yellow center, but the American petals are narrow while the European petals are rounded. And with that, we reach the end of this week's episode of Invasive Species Friday. Next Friday, we have a recently arrived fruit menace. Until then, we at the Yates CCE thank you for tuning in and supporting our fight against invasive species in Yates County.